In the annals of time, riding social forces as they crest and crash onto the shores of history, some would-be heroes stumble but manage to recover their breath. Others are reduced to the flotsam and jetsam of nostalgia. These others are our subjects. They are the vanquished, 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 vanquished.
Welcome to The Vanquished. Anders J. Lee here with my co-host,
Freddie G. Happy to be here.
and we are joined today by two of my favorite massholes, which is what they call people from Massachusetts. We got the host, and graciously let us into his apartment, Alex Ptak.
Hey everybody! Thanks for having me here at the Masshole Factory.
And our good friend, the attendant at the Masshole Factory, Andrew Durso.
What's up, everybody? Celtics in the playoffs. I think they go all the way this year. God's favorite state. Let's go.
Take it to the rim.
I think you should be careful about that because it might give Mike Dukakis a heart attack if the Celtics make it to the finals. That'll be a little too much for him. I think he's at the ripe age of 90.
I mean, we'll get into it. I had no idea how old he was.
He's 90.
I guess in my head, he just ran for president when he was like 24 or something.
I try not to do anything that might, if Michael Dukakis saw it, give him a heart attack.
Yeah,
because you never know where he is.
Yeah. Right. I've been wishing failure on every Boston sports franchise.
Just to keep him. I mean, then depression might hit, which has sadly been an issue for the Dukakis family. But
yes,
how off subject are we willing to go 2 minutes into the podcast?
This is an important question. I know nothing about Michael Dukakis.
I do have a vaguely funny anecdote.
Yes, that's why I sort of want to have you guys on because you grew up in Massachusetts, where a lot of these presidential losers, and this is the only one we've done so far who's been alive, I think. Where a lot of them are kind of legends in their home states, and I don't know how
we have like a pretty bad habit for as successful as we are at sports. We also produce a lot of I guess you could call them Rizzless politicians. You have your Dukakises, your Liz Warrens, your Joe Kennedys.
Yeah, they're more proud of Ted Kennedy, I think. Yeah, even though he never got the nominee, at least he was cool.
I don't think you can call any Kennedy a Rizzless politician because it's the kind of thing where like, it's a quantity over quality question where it's like we made 15 of these and 12 of them are very charming, sick men.
You say even Joe Kennedy gets some. Well, okay, this is the anecdote I did want to get into. Yes. In one of the debates, it's like the best contained example I've ever seen of like why Joe Kennedy was just like not built for this, which is they were asking like, I don't know, like a puff question at the end of the debates or something. Like the moderator was like, "Oh, what's one thing that your wife hates?" And like Joe Kennedy just kind of like stun locks for a second.
Freeze.
Like for real.
It would have been fun if he was like redheads.
But he stun locks and like after like 10 seconds of going like, he kind of just says, feet on the couch. Wife hates feet on the couch.
That's an honest answer.
Wife hates feet on the couch. And then like just pans over to Ed Markey and it's his turn. And he says, "My wife can't stand it. I love the Red Sox." If you see like a Joe Kennedy's eyes, he just goes like, "Fuck."
Yeah, that's good. Why didn't I think of local sports team?
Man, well, I want to ask you guys if you have any recollection at all of hearing about Dukakis growing up in Massachusetts, or if that's just a total abstraction.
Not growing up because I wasn't born yet, and he kind of was.
That was the main thing, was not being born yet.
Were you guys born in 1991? Because he was still governor until 1991.
I was, but I was really busy that year with ambulating and breathing.
I didn't start following local politics until I was 3. So that would have been around 1990.
I mean, the thing is, it's different for every state. In Minnesota, we have a number of losers. Hubert Humphrey is the big one, and his name is on everything. So you can't go anywhere growing up without seeing HHH on stuff, including the Metrodome, which is where they played.
No, Minnesota's known as the land of 1,000 losers.
Yeah.
Hilariously, the first time I ever can clearly recall hearing Michael Dukakis' name is in the movie Donnie Darko.
I was just about to say that. That's so dumb.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's kind of it's it's the first big dramatic beat in that movie that she says she's voting for Dukakis.
Why are you wearing that president suit? Remember that line? Rabbit says to Michael Dukakis.
Right. Well, it's the way of telling you, like, oh, the 80s nostalgia, it's nice, but it wasn't all Back to the Future and Kajagoogoo. There's also political strife in families.
Yeah, the pedophiles are around.
Yeah. So I'm the old man of the group. I was 5 when he was running for president.
Oh, wow.
And I went to visit my dad at work, first time ever. He's a special ed teacher. And the kids all came back. They all went to a Dukakis rally in New York.
The kids did.
Yeah, the kids. He didn't get to go. Yeah, they took the special ed kids to the Dukakis rally.
Okay,
Well, they know what they like.
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you remember this at all?
I wasn't at the rally. I was there afterwards. I remember later on I came there more times and I started losing. I lost the checkers to one of the special ed kids.
That's really nice of you.
And I started crying and I had to go back. Yeah, in hindsight, but I was 5. Yeah. Anyhow, though, my dad gave me this like a year or two ago. We have a Dukakis doll.
That just looks like the penguin.
It really does, yeah. Well, Dukakis is short. He's 5'8". He's one of our shortest presidential candidates ever.
Wow.
And that was from the 88 campaign, this little figurine?
There's no way it was made after that. No one wanted a Dukakis doll.
Yeah.
And it says Duke on the back. Duke is his nickname.
They are really leaning into his eyebrows here because it's not just that they're thick eyebrows. There's like extra eyebrow underneath those eyebrows.
Well, yeah, that was the first time I actually ever heard of Dukakis. When I was 5 and I was traumatized seeing him without his gorilla mask. So I thought the character was real.
Now, if you're watching the video, you'll know the little figurine could be a gorilla.
It is a gorilla.
He has a gorilla suit
They
on.
just put a gorilla head on. Oh, yeah, that's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember Donnie Darko. I also remember watching a documentary about Lee Atwater, which I
know. What's the name of that? That's a good documentary.
Oh yeah, I should. I have it pulled up somewhere here. But
all I remember is I think like George W. Bush and that you see footage of him playing a good guitar that says Vice Prez written on it.
Yeah.
Boogeyman, the Lee Atwater story came out in 2008. I remember it premiered on PBS, and I was a regular viewer in high school of the local PBS affiliate, and they showed Michael Dukakis and his wife Kitty. They were talking about how Lee Atwater did them dirty. Lee Atwater, Bush Senior's campaign strategist who did all these dirty tricks, specifically against Dukakis. And there's footage of them after they're talking about it, just doing dishes. And it's like this is a guy who's been at the precipice of American politics, the world stage, and now he's relegated to just doing dishes by hand in Brookline. And
so the story I heard was he used to pick up trash on the Northeastern campus.
Oh, yeah?
It's kind of as like a good Samaritan activity. But I was also told that by a guy who's a compulsive liar. So we're going
to use all kinds of sources. That's really what the campaign was about in 88, was just about lying about each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really specific lie to make up, I gotta say.
Those are the best kinds of lies. You would tell lies like that. You'd be like, oh, yeah, I used to play like pickup basketball with like Gary Sharon from Van Halen.
Prove I didn't.
Yeah, it was like, there's no way to disprove that.
Dukakis was a guy with no hobbies.
Yeah,
so, he would just pick up trash for fun.
That's 100% something he would do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we should get into it. He's the son of Greek immigrants. His father's name Panos, comes to the United States 1912. He's 16 years old, comes straight from Greece, and has $15 in his pocket. I've heard other sources say 25.
Wow.
But it's weird that they would accentuate that. Usually it's like a nickel, no nickels, no money at all, or like $1 because inflation, $15, that you could buy a house with that at that time. It's not a small amount of money.
The Dukakises are people who really keep track of money. So balancing the budget was his favorite part of governing.
$25 is generational wealth back then.
Yeah.
That's true. It's a big difference from 15, I might add.
Right. And he does he comes straight to Massachusetts, doesn't speak English within 12 years. He's graduated from Harvard Medical School, and the first doctor in the Boston area who is Greek, and that's a big deal.
Big accomplishment.
They were demanding it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The mortality went way down.
But
he showed them that the old staff with the serpent on it. That was his idea.
Yeah, I mean that's the medical establishment. what he leaves out of the story is that they say, oh, he didn't take out any loans to go to medical school, but he did borrow money from his brothers, Mike's uncles. So it's not like, again, there's some little, boosting to this. He is an immigrant, as is Mike's mom, but they're not like that hard scrabble, really.
No, this comes up a lot in Boston. If you borrow from a brother, that's a loan. That's as official as a transaction from the bank. Because they're going to shake you down for that.
Yeah.
Well, the Greeks are known for not paying their debts. So.
Yeah, that's true. He should have done a debt amnesty campaign, yeah. But his mother is named Euterpe Boucus. That's her real name.
Household name.
But
Sounds
she
like a
changes
dish in
it.
Astoria.
But she comes to Haverhill 1912, goes to Bates College, and quickly takes on the nickname Zippy. That's what she's called.
Yeah, call me Euterpe. Yeah.
Which, she's very, and this is a big theme throughout Dukakis' life and his campaign, is his Greek heritage. And for a time in Massachusetts, early 20th century, that is shameful to be a Greek. And she, really tried to assimilate, and Mike would practice saying things in proper English in front of the mirror. And she denies, he later says, oh yeah, we did Greek dancing. And she says, we did not do that in this household.
Not allowed to.
Yeah.
Michael Dukakis doing like a Dirk Diggler from Boogie Nights. It's just like, you're a star.
You're a star. You're not even Greek.
Oh, she's in the front line, Doc, and she says, politics comes from the Greek word polis. We invented politics. So everyone in Greece knows American politics, is what she said.
I would say that, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why he doesn't have any hobbies, is because he's, politics, that fills the void for his entire life. And his dad, Panos, does not publicly care about politics. He's asked for his opinion sometimes, and he will always say, leave me alone.
Yeah. Ask my son, the technocrat in the family.
Yeah. And it was kind of a removed guy, not a super emotive father, but he has, Mike is born in 1933, but he has an older brother named Stellion, and they grow up in Brookline, which Michael Dukakis has lived in Brookline basically his entire life. And I have a question about Brookline. So this is a dispute between actually my mom and my sister.
Yes, it is near one of the earliest Anna's Taqueria locations.
Yeah?
That's true. Look
Anna's
it up.
Taquerias?
Yes, a local Massachusetts chain.
Okay.
That you can go to. This is what you brought me here for. And by here, I mean my house.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is going to devolve into a 60-minute argument over Anna's versus Felipe's Taqueria. I'll tell you one guy who'd love it, Mike Dukakis. Brookline resident.
Here's a weird Boston food fact. When you go to Canada, they have a pizza franchise called Boston Pizza.
Yes.
So in Canada, they think you guys have good pizza.
They're wrong.
I know.
Or they don't understand. Well, they don't understand. It's the opposite. We're like, one of the great things about being from Boston is you don't have to pretend to care about food. What the best pizza is. It's a waste of energy.
I didn't realize they were Canadian. They have at least a couple suburban Minnesota locations, Boston.
That's basically Canada.
Okay.
Canadians are famously kind of ironic people, so I could see this being,
Yeah, that franchise was named after Kids in the Hall's Kevin McDonald.
I mean, maybe the idea. Maybe it was the band Boston they were going for.
I never went in there. Yeah, I should have. I was like, as a New Yorker, I couldn't walk into Boston Pizza in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Fair enough. But let me ask you guys this. So, is Brookline a suburb? My sister says, yeah, that's a suburb. My mom, who lived in Brookline in the 70s, is like, no, it is not a suburb. It's technically a city car suburb, but it's the city. She's very
vibe-wise, I would say, yeah, it's an upper, middle class, what you call a section of Boston, suburban feeling.
The Boston metro area, Boston is lying about being a city like LA or New York. Yes. It is not like a city. Like, you don't hang out downtown all day unless you are a college student and live there. There's a mile radius of the city part, and then the extended suburbs area, they're that's Boston. So Brookline is Boston and it's the city, but you can't get around without a car.
It's where the urban bourgeois settled down.
Yeah, it's where let's say nobody lives Mike Dukakis lives.
Right. Nobody lives in Boston except I don't know. Yeah, it's It's like where like the Sackler family sends its weirdest kid to study creative writing. Like, those are the people who live in Boston.
So Dukakis is still alive, still lives in Brooklyn. I like to picture him with a 1950s couch, still the plastic on, that his mom bought.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, my mom would say that they have apartment buildings and she lived in an apartment in Brookline. So that makes it kind of the city, but it sounds, but so you can understand Dukakis truly, I believe, as a man of the suburbs. This is true to his like oeuvre as a human being. Yes, Greeks were getting discriminated against, so he's growing up, trying to not seem super Greek. But his older brother is 3 years older, and they have kind of a rivalry. They are very close, but it was a competitive relationship. This is according to Time magazine. If Stellion made the Honor Society, Michael became president. Stellion was picked for the tennis team. Michael would be named team captain.
Stellion must have not made the Honor Society. Get him. Sorry.
No safe spaces here.
Real Jacob and Esau from the Bible situation.
Oh, yes.
To make a more contemporary reference to 1988.
Yeah. So this is kind of a sad aspect to it. When Mike, which by the way, he did not go by Mike growing up. He took that on later in life. His parents were like, "You are Michael."
If Stellion gets a goofy ass name, Michael's gonna be called Michael.
If he was Mike Duke, would he have been president?
Mike Duke.
I mean, he would have done better, I think.
Yeah,
that was his nickname, the Duke, but everybody kind of knew it was, cloaking a
secret Greek man.
Yeah.
Also,
not a Duke.
This guy is not John Wayne.
No.
Yeah, that figure is clearly Mr. Bean.
Right. So while Michael is a senior in high school, Stellion has a nervous breakdown, comes home from Bates College, tries to,
kill himself.
Yes, thank you. And then with medication and counseling, he just he starts to like finish college, but he ends up hating Michael. He becomes chronically unstable, aggressively hostile towards his younger brother, and in the 1970s, when he is running for re-election to state representative, Michael's already a politician in Massachusetts. Stellion distributes leaflets against his younger brother.
Oh, I forgot about this. Yeah.
It sounds like he's done nothing wrong, in my opinion. This competition sounds very unhealthy to me.
Yeah, it's like Greek political foxcatcher.
But the way what happens to him next, though, the tragic ending you guys can relate to as bike riders.
Yes. So in 1973, he's 42 years old. Stellion gets hit by a car while riding his bike and sadly passes away 4 months later. So
I will say the argument for Brookline being a city is it does seem unsafe to ride a bike.
Okay, there you go.
Now Michael has to die on a motorcycle.
Especially if your brother is a budding political career.
Oh,
wink, wink, wink.
I didn't say it.
So Michael in high school, I really related to this part, Michael being in high school, because he was extremely ambitious and regarded as highly intelligent by everyone, and also avoided, like the plague, dating. He chose.
You probably relate to a lot of young politicians. Yeah, he wasn't like all the ones that laid pipe.
I mean, Slick Willie, the guy who succeeded him as Democratic nominee, maybe that's what it takes to win.
That was more popular with voters, was being the king of fuck.
Yeah.
Anders tested very poorly with voters in 1992. That's why they went with old Huckleberry Hound.
Yeah.
I do like the books are basically like he didn't date, but the women all wanted him. Yes. I hope one day they'll write that, because I didn't date in high school, that they'll write, oh, the women really secretly wanted Fred.
Right. And it seemed,
how could you prove that?
It seemed genuine. They interviewed classmates and they're all like, we wanted to jump his bones, but he just wanted nothing to do with it.
I don't know. This sounds like the PR machine.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone with a gun was off camera for that interview.
In the 40s, eyebrows were sexy, and no one had more eyebrows than Michael Dukakis. More eyebrows than most presidential candidates put together.
Yeah. But he is similar situation when he's in college at Swarthmore, also does not date. He, at the time, a lot of people from the Boston area went to Harvard. and he thought Harvard would be too social. So he wanted to go to a school where he could focus more on his studies.
I want the distraction of a yearly Yale football game.
What if they tried to make me row?
Right.
When the social,
I don't want to. I don't want to be in this. I'm gonna have to like make a program where you rank your students based on hotness.
yeah, he ranked the girls based on who he didn't want to talk to.
Yeah. But he also liked the fact that it was a Quaker school. Even though he was not Quaker himself, he just admired that about Swarthmore.
Why would girls want to fuck this guy? I don't understand. He has all of the like reclusive tendencies of a serial killer.
Oh, it's so sexy how you burn animals.
He refused to join fraternities because they blackballed people. He also became a minor legend at Swarthmore. He set up a dormitory barbershop to serve Nigerian students whose hair the local barbers refused to cut. And this was, according to Time magazine, the perfect Dukakis enterprise, high-minded and lucrative at the same time. So he's cleaning up cutting Nigerian hair.
Wait, he's cutting it?
Yeah.
He's personally cutting
In his dorm room.
When did he learn how to cut Nigerian hair?
I guess it's...
Or it's just that they can't get service at all outside of his
Yeah, we got to see pictures. These cuts probably weren't good.
No.
Michael, you need a hobby other than polish. Nigerian hair.
He did the cut like in a Coming to America. We just cut like they had all their hair tied up and he just cut it off and charged the money.
Yeah.
But it's so fun being from Boston and hearing anything about the city, by the way, but like Nigerians couldn't get their hair cut and Greeks weren't allowed outside. Especially if they danced. It's a great town. This country's based on it.
So he, during college, he does intern in Washington, and this is while the McCarthy hearings are going on, and that is a very formative experience for him. He's certainly not a communist, but does become an opponent of anti-communism of the McCarthyite variety, and is kind of appalled at the way McCarthy's making a mockery of the Constitution and all this stuff.
And the way he loses in '88 is kind of like McCarthyism. Like they tag him with all kinds of labels that don't really apply.
Right. And politics has changed in that 30-year stretch. So in 1955, he graduates college, joins the military. He gets sent to Korea, and later on, a bit of a Dukakis exaggeration. He says he was in, quote, rice paddies in Korea, which is maybe true, but the insinuation there is that he was fighting the Korean War, which was over by the time he got there.
Is there to start a paddy business?
But as a 5'8" guy, he would have towered over and he could have won that. He would have been like the Goliath of that war.
Maybe, yeah.
What are they feeding these guys?
So meanwhile, he comes back to the United States and meets a woman who was in his high school at the same time he was. She was a freshman while he was a senior. And I think this is like the first relationship he's in, basically.
The goal is to not have a life story like this. Like, I don't know, I could stand by my Massachusetts brother, like in all cases, but like... Yeah, I don't know. God, if I reach 90, I'm like, the first half of my life is just like, I never fucked. I lied all the time.
A lot of will they, won't days with Andrew.
He poorly cut hair.
The women wanted him, but he wouldn't let them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how many women he slept with before Kitty. I do like that his mom is Zippy and his wife is Kitty. That's kind of fun.
Right. Kitty's interesting. Her dad...
Do you know Oedipus was Greek? Fun thing I remember.
I'm sure there's something going on there. But Kitty, her dad was a Boston Symphony Orchestra violinist, and her name is Dixon. And she was like 26 when they get married, and she's already divorced and has a kid. Mike is 29 and decides as like his first... He's probably relationship to marry this young divorcee.
Ooh,
which is kind of cool.
Sometimes these lonely men, they seek a wise figure, a partner who's been around the bend.
Yes.
She's a lot of drama, Kitty, though. Kitty has trouble.
I want to hear more about Kitty. Do you have Kitty
You go out
queued
in
up over
Boston
there?
nightlife, all you find is these fuckboys. They know nothing about cutting Nigerian hair.
So him and Kitty get married in like 62, it sounds like. From 62 to 82, she's addicted to diet pills.
Yeah.
She's got to stay thin. But Michael, the 29-year-old guy who didn't date much, you got to stay thin for him.
Yeah, he's going to leave. He's going to walk out the door.
Yeah, I mean, credit to them for still being together to this day, but she has struggled with addiction and
but are they both old Catholics? Because it might just be a loveless marriage. That's just a real thing that happens a lot.
Now, is he Catholic or Greek Orthodox? I didn't look that up, but he might be Greek Orthodox.
Well, that's a subset of Catholic, right?
Oh, don't get started. You do not yet. We'll do another podcast on the Great Schism on the Vanquished. Yeah, that is not a subset. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I would say if you're a offshoot of a religion, you're pretty much a failed presidential candidate.
He is.
I've always said that.
He is Greek Orthodox, and I can't help but admire his stamina. Having been to one Greek Orthodox wedding, there is like an hour of standing and listening to chants and incantations.
He loves that. He's got nothing better to do.
They're the only Christians that love ritual. All the other ones, fast, loose, get it done.
Whatever.
Cool beards they got. Yeah. The whatever guys have a beards. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Kitty is a sad. I mean, again, they are together, so good for them. But she, after the campaign, has a real hard time. She's treated for alcoholism and also hospitalized in 1990 or 1989 for drinking rubbing alcohol.
Damn.
She loves this stuff.
I don't know if it was a mistake.
I've only seen that in The Master, I think.
Yeah.
I also think
It's a rock
Billy
bottom.
Joel tried to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, okay, so after a certain point of alcoholism, you get to a point where you're like, I know what part of this I like about it. And they have it for soap. So I'm just going to go straight to that.
Yeah. His nickname becomes the Duke as a young man, but he's at the time, I guess, John Wayne. That's also the Duke.
Yes, he is could not be less like John Wayne.
Yeah, but
Wait, John Wayne's name is also the Duke?
Yeah,
This is
that's
called
what
John
they call
Wayne the
him.
Duke.
Also,
Marion.
I think John Wayne was on the opposite side of McCarthyism. I think John Wayne named names. He's in that Trumbo movie with Bryan Cranston,
yeah.
where he's depicted as like a bad guy in that.
I 100% believe this. He's the guy before Clint Eastwood, so
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I assume there's like a political legacy there.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't let you play a cowboy unless you'll name a communist in a congressional hearing.
Right. So Dukakis' first election is to Brookline Town Meeting, which is what they call their council. That also sounds kind of Quaker.
Very Quaker
He
pill.
was so weird that they wouldn't let him go to the meeting without an election.
But that's in the late 50s. And he becomes chair of the Brookline Democratic Party organization in 1960. And this is where I think the suburban stuff comes in. He is an anti-patronage reformer. Because at the time, Democratic parties throughout the country are, there's a lot of urban machines and they run on patronage. And they, in the words of one of his colleagues, a lot of the people he was going up against, they got involved in politics to make people's lives better. Many of them were corrupt, but that, it was means to an end, right? They improved people's well-being in these neighborhoods. And Dukakis did not get involved in politics to make people's lives better. That's what this guy says. He did it to reform government. So
He's about cleaning up the budget. He's just like the accountant for the whole thing.
He was very against spending $5 a month to get more of a podcast. He was like against that
because it's a patronage system. Do you understand?
I'd like to think that him and Kitty finally break up because she pays the extra $5 to hear the rest of the dirt on him in this pod.
Yeah.
He's honestly a lot like Grover Cleveland, who we talked about in a previous episode. Just like I'm the guy who's going to clean up the budget. I do not care about helping people.
That's kind of interesting because now this is like every politician, right? There's just the patronage system is destroyed, and we have a bunch of people who are doing this as a primer for their career in dissolving corporations. Yeah,
right. It's a total. It's sort of a new patronage system that just doesn't benefit anybody except 1%. But he is eventually elected to the legislature. the lower house, and kind of avoids the 60s culture wars. He doesn't march against Vietnam, but I don't think he's like vocally for the war.
Both sides have a good point.
So he's like, I didn't have time to march on Vietnam. I'm in the state assembly, and I need to work on no-fault car insurance. That's what I'm going to do. I can't stop Vietnam, but I can make this car insurance a little bit simpler to use.
I'm just so tied up with my business I started in Korea.
I mean, he was instrumental in now in Massachusetts, if there's like a car accident, you were allowed to apologize without it being used against you, and that's like
it's a great policy, but it wasn't sexy. Yeah. Also, if you're Michael Dukakis' Korean love child, please reach out to us, 'cause we'd like to know what his life was like before kidding.
I know it's not me.
I mean, there is a resemblance.
Yeah, this is going to become. This just goes like Among Us. For
Someone in this room is Michael Dukakis' Korean child.
we have a soundproof.
I'm secretly 56 years old.
But he's elected, 1962, serves 4 terms in the Massachusetts House, and each election he wins by a bigger margin than the last one. And then by 1970, he's the lieutenant gubernatorial nominee, but they lose. Him and Boston Mayor Kevin White, they lose to Frank Sargent and Donald Dwight, who are the Republicans. So
can't beat Dwight.
Dwight
ran a hell of a campaign.
But in 1974, he says, I'm going to take it all the way. I'm going to run for governor. And he beats Sargent head to head. And so the Democrats are now in control of the capital, which is in Boston. Massachusetts is one of those states where the capital city is also the largest city, which makes things easier for out-of-towners.
I can't believe it whenever that's not the situation, frankly. I know this is my privilege talking, but why would you have a second city that's worse? That's where all the important people are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from St. Paul, which is the capital of Minnesota, also the second largest city, and it's just kind of all we got going on there. There's a beautiful Capitol building.
Albany is really far from New York.
Yeah.
It's
a prime example, Albany.
And Albany has no need for a subway. So it makes sense why they do not want to fund our subway. It is a very walkable and drivable city.
That's true. All of the anti-trains, and I realize this is the Michael Dukakis podcast, but all of the anti-train stuff that happens in New York State, I'm just like, you fuckers don't even live where all the people live.
Wait, Michael Dukakis, though, even back in the 70s, was for high-speed rail. So he would be loving this.
Ahead of the curve. It just makes more sense. We all know it makes more sense.
So he kind of does. He has a new healthcare policy he brings to Massachusetts. You know a little bit about this, Fred, right?
I have now forgotten what I wrote down about that.
He does universal healthcare. He's able to.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, he does universal healthcare. I don't know which year he does it, but then it doesn't get mentioned in the campaign. They mentioned it once that it's going to cut off AZT to AIDS patients, but it's like he did universal healthcare, and like no one's going to give him any credit for it. He never brings it up himself.
And then he also institutes a right to shelter, but is also a fiscal conservative. And, this is still...
Shelters for homeless people.
Yeah. This is still kind of when the wires are a bit crossed with liberal Republicans, conservative Democrats. And so he's a cost cutter and cuts the cost of living increase for state workers. He... has some regressive taxes like sales tax.
Yeah, if you raise the sales tax from 3 to 5, that's like everyone notices it whenever they buy groceries. And that might be why he's about to lose.
Yeah, he's accused in his first gubernatorial term as being very arrogant and aloof, and again, a reformer and not really a grassroots guy who's willing to make compromises. And he's, he will just kind of reflect back to saying I'm right, which he says several times when he's like said, well, these people are like, everyone disagrees with you.
That's such a fucking Boston argument. You're like, count the rings. Count the fucking rings, bro.
He's a little bit of a Socrates, honestly. Yeah, the stubborn, doesn't matter, make me drink poison. He loses, but he like Grover Cleveland, he'll be back.
Yes. So he is primaried in 1978 This guy King unseats him, and he doesn't run for re-election after losing the primary, and has to reflect on the bad things he's done. And it's actually very similar to Clinton, who around this time is unseated as Arkansas governor a little later, and then makes a comeback.
Did he play saxophone yet?
Bill?
Yeah.
He was playing since he was in high school. That's
I didn't know
big
Bill
distinction.
Bill actually has to play saxophone on the Tonight Show after his convention speech for Dukakis.
That's why I'm kind of wondering. Like,
Dukakis famously appeared on the Tonight Show to cut some Nigerian hair. That was like this big moment that endeared him to the youth of
Leno would have loved that.
He gets the shape of it. I could see an arc where Bill Clinton doesn't know saxophone, but then learns it to grow as a politician.
Yeah.
But sometimes real life doesn't work that way.
Like he takes a poll and that's the most popular.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We found the most popular instrument.
Yeah, it's
you
based on
just
Lisa
learn
Simpson.
everything in life is like fucking jazz, man.
I mean, here's not to get off on a Bill Clinton tangent, but there is something that explains so in high school, he lives in a broken home, Bill Clinton. And so his focus turns to school, saxophone, and then a third thing. You know what I mean? And Dukakis is not like that. Much more stable family life, and makes him thus less interesting. And
Pretty much allergic to girls.
Yeah.
Clinton basically wins by being the anti-Dukakis. Like he's good at the attack ads. He's cool. He's sexy.
He's the
Southern.
rare the women want him and the men don't want to be. You never get that.
So King winds up being a pretty lousy governor, and Dukakis comes back in.
Duke is pissed because he leaves the books a mess. But Duke has to clean up the books when he comes back.
Yeah. The financial situation is even worse because nobody wants to raise taxes, and to his credit, Dukakis is like, well, we have to balance the budget. We're a state. We can't just print money, and nobody likes the things that he's doing, and so he gets punished for it politically. And then King comes in and can't do anything because he is scared to raise taxes.
Then all of a sudden, look who comes crawling back to old Iron Butt, Michael Dukakis. That was his campaign slogan.
But he announces that he's going to come back via a Christmas card, and it excites people, I guess. And
Back then, Christmas cards were a big deal.
Yeah.
George Bush would send Christmas cards to 4,000 people every year. It was the
a mailing list.
It was the social media of its day.
Do you guys make Christmas cards yet in your old age?
No.
Because
I'm Jewish. Oh.
You could make one. You could make one just for outreach. My younger brother sent one this year, and I was so offended. And I was like, I'm not going to start doing this.
He's trying to.
I don't have children.
He's trying to make you his Stylianos.
It feels that way. That's why I was so offended by that arc.
Yeah.
So Dukakis' big thing in 82 is I'm Duke too. I now listen. That's it. I listen. And supposedly he gets into power. He's still just as stubborn, but he pretends to listen, and that's good enough to come back. He beats King 2-1 in the polls.
Yeah.
So it's listening's enough to get him back.
Right.
Well, I mean, he's got those cards.
But so the thing he does, and I think is actually genius, is when comes back as governor, they have an even worse financial situation. They can't raise taxes politically. So what he does, he brings in a tax expert who's like, get me some kind of plan to figure this out. And like a lot of states, Massachusetts has tons of people who just aren't paying taxes. And there's all that revenue there that's not going collected. People are accruing fines, and they're scared to even get started on it, which, for people in my life relate to. I may or may not relate to that. I don't know if anyone in the IRS
I legally cannot say if I relate to this.
The government owes me money right now, but
yeah.
And what Duke does is he hunts them down one by one. No, just kidding.
No, what he does is he says, we're going to do an amnesty thing. So if you come clean, you say, I want to pay off my taxes, we will forgive all the penalties you have accrued, and you can just pay what you owed in the first place. And way more people do it than they even expect. And so now they're sitting on all this money.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it is a great system. And
it's like that whole thing of if you repent just as soon as you die, you will be allowed into the gates of heaven.
Right.
Oh, yes.
This is the Dukakis version of that.
This is explaining it in a Massachusetts template.
But instead of, and this I think tells us a lot about Dukakis. So instead of going to like a jobs program or like a more classic sort of Great Society, New Deal type thing. It goes into like a job training program that gets women off welfare and into higher paying jobs. Which
is not, that's not sexy at all. But he's like, okay, we're going to name it after a movie. We're going to call this E.T. And they call it E.T. after E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
I know the movie.
Yeah, and then
and people do like that movie.
Guy's familiar with the policy, but not the movie.
Oh yeah. But this program is really popular. It gets women off welfare. They make more money, and it's called the Massachusetts Miracle, and that's why he gets to run for president. Oh. It's the best thing he ever did was naming the stupid thing E.T.
Man,
this is like the 80s is the big like decade of like film politics crossover. You had Reagan, you had E.T., and the Star Wars program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's 3 examples.
Charlton Heston speaks for Bush at his convention.
Okay.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that's when he's becoming a Republican.
But did Charlton Heston become the head of the NRA?
I think that's a little bit later.
Yeah. I think he was just the spokesman. Because I've thought that too, and I don't think they actually put him in charge of anything. No, I mean I could be wrong, but I feel like anyway. I'll look that up. So
I couldn't say.
Next episode of The Vanquished, Charlton Heston dying is not the NRA head. He lost the election for NRA head.
This becomes just a podcast about people who like had failed campaigns to run the NRA.
What are you guys gonna do when you run out of presidential people?
I mean, there's thousands of them because it could be anyone.
Oh, okay.
Right, and really like, you have like all these crazy fringe kids.
Right.
You could do Harambe. Remember when people wrote in Harambe?
Yeah, I would love to return for the Harambe episode. I'm calling it now.
I'm returning for Giant Meteor 2016.
That's the thing is
Giant Meteor.
Oh heavens!
People assume that we're like going in order and starting from the beginning, but we're going all over the place, and we're not just. I mean, Dukakis is a nominee, but we go for minor
Kennedy
ones.
Was never nominated. We did him.
But Dukakis is successful in the 80s at branding himself as the guy behind the, quote, Massachusetts Miracle. It becomes kind of, in policy circles, seen as like a big success. And he's kind of a dark horse candidate coming into 1988. He claims he never had designs on the presidency until Iran-Contra. And that offended him so much that he like had to run for president because he was just disgusted at the way the Reagan administration operated, which I'm sure there's some truth to, but also this little guy I'm sure had some ambition of his own.
If it was him, they never would have let them kidnap those guys.
Oh yeah. Do you want to explain what Iran-Contra is?
Oh, so there's the Reagan was trying to fund the Contra rebels, which is like a right-wing militia in Nicaragua, and the Congress has blocked him from doing that with public money. So he finds a loophole, sells guns, arms to Iran in exchange for money to the Contra rebels, and there's also a whole convoluted situation with hostages who are still in Iran. Some of them get released.
And Oliver North became a novelist.
Yes, and he's still around, and he sometimes gives you policy advice, and you're like, you're that criminal we all know.
Yeah, we should do an episode. One of my favorite documentaries is about his 1994 Senate campaign in Virginia, and he's like fresh off Iran-Contra. He's like just almost.
That I've heard.
The same guy who directed the War Room, who I'm blanking on the name, but it's a great. It's called The War Room's Evil Twin, but it's an amazing.
Shout out to that guy.
It's like a window into 90s politics. But Dukakis.
So I want to talk about George Bush's involvement.
Yeah, sure.
So Bush is the VP. Bush's thing is, I'm Mr. Inside. I know everything, but he knows nothing about Iran-Contra. It comes out he was in 17 meetings. He didn't take any notes. I think it's like the Stringer Bell thing. Like, I think he's a guy who would take notes normally, but he's like, I'm not taking notes in a criminal conspiracy.
Oh, that's so smart.
I mean, he's a CIA old hand, so he knows not to do that.
What a smart, evil man.
Now, Oliver North is not kicked off his Christmas list. So, like, he invites Oliver North to Christmas the year after Iran-Contra. It's like, it's not personal. But he's just able to, like, be so boring about it and never give up the goose. So, like, it never kind of, like, submarines him and makes him lose in the primary of the general.
Yeah.
And so Michael Dukakis wouldn't have done that, you're saying?
Probably not. I don't think he would have traded on for, and and this is a big.
He would be too busy saying sorry to a guy who rear-ended.
Sorry, no money for death squads today.
This is a big issue in the 80s, for all of America, but in the Democratic Party in particular, there's a split on the Contra rebels. Do we tolerate the Sandinista government? Do we try to undermine them? How do we undermine them? And there's a lot of different opinions about that. You have the left, which is generally for the Sandinistas or for non-intervention. And then you have people like Al Gore who are basically saying that the Reagan policy is correct. It should just be done legally. But Dukakis is in favor of the RES peace plan, which is kind of like a middle path.
Finally.
Yeah, let me talk about Gore. Yeah, so the 88 primaries, every famous candidate, Gore's in there, Biden, Dick Gephardt, everyone big is in there. And there's a book that I read about it on the primaries. It's 500 pages. It's the same length as War and Peace, and it's just about the 88 primaries. The Richard Kramer book.
Yes.
Wow, even better.
It is called What It Takes, and the nickname when it was released around DC was What It Weighs, because it was so
come on.
It was so
this a
big.
book about my wife? Come on.
And Gore doesn't get that much detail. He's not one of the 6 people they profile. But Gore is just basically I'm going to be a war guy.
Yeah.
I'm the toughest of this field because Michael Dukakis is that not tough.
Right.
So soft.
And neither is Jackson. Jackson isn't profiled either because he's not seen
Jesse
as
Jackson's in this.
Yeah, he isn't seen as a serious contender until late in the process, which we'll get to. But Dukakis,
This is like political Live Aid. Oh my God.
Yeah, they got all the stars. They're all out.
Dukakis launches his campaign in April of 1987. He's kind of taking and this is what helps him get the nomination, I think. He's positioning himself as the moderate within the Democratic Party. So he's not as far right as Gore, but he's also certainly not as far left as Jackson. He wants less money to boondoggle weapon systems, but he does want more money to conventional forces, quote unquote.
Like tanks.
Yes.
Intense.
Right, which is not a very smart idea. We don't need either of those.
These tanks now, and they're useless. They just get shit on by remote control cars to the enemy.
Wait, do you guys know about the tank thing? He gets
A specific thing?
He gets in a tank.
Oh wait, Anders has told me about this.
Everyone who's listening, Google Dukakis tank.
Yeah.
It's a pretty funny photo of him just being ooh.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
Yeah, that's
infantry is useless.
Sorry, this is going back a little bit, but that's so crazy. He beat out 8 people. How horrible was the pool of candidates?
Sometimes primary winners are just the best people to win a primary. I think.
Yeah, a lot of people self-destruct. So there's Gary Hart. Who's people's choice. He's young, he's sexy. He says
he's a cheating scandal.
Yeah, he's to the media whatever, you can tail me, I'm doing nothing. And then they tail his house, and he brings a woman over to his house, gets in trouble. He's on a boat with a woman.
What are you going to do? Stab me?
I mean, and the thing is, he to this day, and we're definitely going to do a Gary Hart episode at some point. But he's to this day, he refuses to talk about it. And there is a pretty credible theory that the monkey business photo, they weren't actually hooking up; they were just friends. But he's
a classic Dukakis situation.
Yeah.
She wanted it, but he was get away.
He's completely horrified by the media circus, and that they would ask him questions about his personal life. And this is really one of the first elections where a candidate's personal life becomes as.
So this was the. Sorry, This is also the primary where Jesse Jackson said the word I don't want to say. That
was 1984.
Okay, gotcha.
Where he refers to New York.
I thought it was that.
Oh, I always thought it was anti-Semitic. Yeah, I can say. I guess I don't even know if this is still a Jewish show. He calls it Himey Town. I'm Jewish, and we always hated him. But by 88, he's cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah,
and Koch endorses Gore and doesn't help.
Right. Which
that's one of those old slurs that just makes you laugh.
So they asked
Gary Hart drops out for several months. He kind of takes a vacation basically because he's so mad about and there's a whole movie about this. Anyway,
it's inconceivable to me that you would run for president and be I didn't know there they were going to follow me with cameras.
Right. It is. But
I don't want to be in the limelight here. Just president of America.
It sounds to me like someone just wanted a vacation.
But like at this point, this is still a very new thing. Like just 20 years earlier, JFK was cheating on his wife openly, and the press easily could have covered that if they wanted to, but there was an understanding, and over the course of, I guess, almost 3 decades at that point, that understanding breaks down.
There simply isn't done.
I think it changed around Watergate, but like a guy like Ford or Carter are too boring to have anything really happen to them.
Yeah. And so, there's a lot of guys who are knocked out. Biden, of course, the plagiarism scandal, and
they make a video. It's like, this speech is the same as the speech RFK gave 20 years ago.
Yeah.
He sucks so bad, dog. He cheats all the time.
And then Dick Gephardt, who's a fairly, mainstream Democratic congressman, but decides to differentiate himself. He makes trade an issue. And he, for my money, I think he's basically correct. But it alienates all the Democratic Party donors. And he's not really a guy with that kind of connection and credibility that someone like Jackson has, fairly or unfairly, and so Gephardt's kind of dead in the water.
He does have the slogan "Make America First Again," a preview of Trump.
Right.
Trump doesn't run, but he is lurking in this as well.
I do like being first.
Yeah. So there's the Iowa caucuses. Gephardt wins. Dukakis finishes third. He says we won the bronze, and then New Hampshire. Dukakis wins, Gephardt's second, and by Super Tuesday, the race has kind of come down to either Dukakis, Gore, or Jesse Jackson. And probably the most interesting in retrospect primary is New York, which is in April of '88, and that's when it's becoming clear that Gore is to the right and Dukakis to the left, Jackson's to the left, and Dukakis starts winning by just establishing himself as the guy in the middle. And in New York, Ed Koch endorses Gore, and Ed Koch won't shut up. He keeps running his mouth about Jesse Jackson, and he's like, Jews, I don't understand how any Jew could vote for Jesse Jackson. And Al Gore is, despite being, at this point, by the way, a lot of the footage of these debates and stuff, you get a whole lot of sassy Al Gore. He is
That's some of the best Al Gore.
Yeah. He is sassing it up against his opponents on the war issue, too. He's saying they should have supported Grenada. Where were they? He's very hawkish on foreign policy.
You can't wire that.
Yeah.
What are those? Pointing at the other candidate's shoes and saying, what are those?
Your mother let you leave the house.
But by the New York primary, it's kind of caught up with him, and he has this surrogate, Ed Koch, who's running his mouth, and he gets embarrassed. He's like, he speaks for himself. I don't know. I didn't tell him to say that. And a lot of voters in New York in the primary are basically okay, well, it's either going to be Jackson or Dukakis, and we're going to go with Dukakis. There are still progressive whites and a lot of black Democrats who vote for Jackson. Comes in second. Dukakis is also helped by his cousin, the actress Olympia Dukakis, who is big coming
a household name.
I mean, she's at this time. This is after Moonstruck, which I was just watching.
Lady.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that movie takes place in New York. So
a great fake Italian woman.
Yeah,
That's
she's doing Italian face.
Wait, what was his name of his brother again?
Stelliano.
Stelliano.
I've said it a few different ways.
Stelliano. Yeah. That's similar to Moonstruck. If you haven't watched that movie, check it out.
Where's my wife? Where's my hand? You'll understand it when you see the film.
But the Moonstruck endorsement, I think, helps put him over the top in New York. And then
vote for my candidate with a wife and a hand.
It's too bad too, because
That's why we're going to lose this year. We don't have the Moonstruck vote.
Yeah. Jackson is actually running to undo Reaganomics. He wants to cut defense and raise the top tax rate. Big problem Jackson has is that he's met with Castro and he's met with Arafat, who is still considered a terrorist at this point.
Did he play basketball with Castro? Do we have a record on that?
I don't think that happened.
I'm trying to find out who's played basketball with Castro. I've been asking this on every podcast I've been on recently.
I remember seeing something about that. There is some historical figure.
In the Jackson episode, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely coming down the
because he was playing everybody.
You know, Bernie was there too. Yeah. Bernie is involved in that. I think he endorses Jackson. He says it's the most important campaign of the last 50 years. Something
when
like that.
When that guy hears basketball's involved.
Yeah.
It is against the spirit of the game to Euro step. I asked to redo the point.
So what's Bernie, mid-40s at this point?
In his age?
Yeah, Bernie's around mid-40s.
Yeah.
So he's still older than I am
40s,
now.
yeah. Dukakis wins New York, but Jackson stays in it, manages to win Michigan because there's so many disaffected voters with Reaganomics. They don't see Dukakis talking about their issues. There's union members, and so as kind of a middle finger, they vote for Jackson in Michigan. And there's like a week where it looks like maybe he'll get the nomination, and then the Wisconsin primary comes. A lot of similar voters, but the prospect of Jackson actually being nominated kind of freaks them out. Because of, combination of their own racism and and just like predicting the racism of the rest of the country.
Right.
And, he's running a very left-wing campaign. I would love to say that Jesse would have won, and I think there's a case he would have done better, but hard to argue that he actually would have won in 1980.
I think Bush, if he was able to beat Dukakis by associating with a black guy, he would be able to beat the black candidate. I don't know if America... If the voters were ready, unfortunately.
Right, and he was also running, unlike Obama, a very explicitly progressive campaign. So
yeah, and also those things are before New York's where he kind of clinches it. I think Wisconsin is where he kind of puts Jackson like where he's looking bad, and then New York he clinches it.
Right, New York.
And then Jackson stays in, but after New York it's over.
Listen, when I agreed to do this show, I didn't know you guys were going to be talking about other states. I'm out here to talk about Dukakis, Drew Bledsoe, and Aerosmith. Go Boston, baby.
In the summer of '88, this becomes one of the, as Brokaw calls it, Tom Brokaw, one of the longest and bloodiest campaigns for president. This is, Bush is at this point.
Brokaw famously said, more like what it weighs. How long is this thing?
Yeah. It got me again.
No, there's basically no issues. They don't ever say we really disagree on anything important. It's just basically a roast battle. Yeah. The media's roasting them. Everyone's just shitting on these two guys. And of course, Dan Quayle.
Yes. Yeah. And, we forgot at this point, Bush is a sitting vice president, but there has not been a sitting vice president who's been elected since Van Buren. So it's not a foregone conclusion that he's going to win or even get the Republican nomination. He has a tough primary battle of his own, chooses Dan Quayle. It takes him a really long time to make up his mind, and he does it on kind of a lark, and that becomes an embarrassment because Quayle is an idiot. And on the other side of things,
let me give you a little more about.
What was the fruit again with Dan Quayle?
Potato.
Got it. Okay.
And he spelled it with an
you
E.
did a worse thing, because potato is not at all a fruit.
Well.
Oh yes. Well, I'm not running for vice president.
Potato's a tuber. Yeah. So the thing with Quayle's he looks young. He's 42. He's not insanely young. Other presidents have been that age, but he has this look like the most annoying, spoiled guy, the bad guy in every prep school movie. You just absolutely hate him, and he's not having a good time because he's kind of religious and
it was the election of iron butts. That was what I did.
Yeah. The Benson is the choice of Dukakis. Lloyd Benson is a senator from Texas, and for a while it seems like maybe he's going to consider Jackson. He's not. The campaign never seriously considers Jesse Jackson, but as a formality, they invite him up to Massachusetts to be quote unquote considered. And Jackson, like me, is lactose intolerant, and the Dukakis family just makes a very milk-heavy meal, not knowing this.
Get it where it hurts.
Maybe they're trying to poison him to get him out of contention.
It's like a Game of Thrones, the food situation.
Yeah, but he takes a long time for Jackson to warm up because he's insulted over this, over the platform, and he goes with Benson because Texas, he thinks, is maybe a winnable state at this point. And if he won Texas, then it would have been a much more competitive race.
But he really should have picked. He could have picked John Glenn, the first guy to orbit the Earth, or at least the first American.
Yes.
Was he on the table?
Yeah, he's a congressman or senator, whatever, from Ohio. They need to win Ohio to win. He doesn't pick the astronaut, he picks Benson. I think he actually did it as kind of a fuck you to Bush, because Benson had beaten Bush in a Senate race once.
Right.
And he's like, this guy can beat Bush. And that's the kind of way Michael Dukakis would think.
That's how you win the presidency. You get in his head. Just make him lose confidence.
Yeah.
Also, Benson is the Senate Budget Committee head, which sounds really boring, but that is Duke's dream job. So that's, I think, also why he's like, that's an amazing job. Yeah, he can balance a budget with me. The books will be clean.
Yeah, excited about that. Never mind that Benson is a very conservative Democrat, even to the right of Dukakis and probably Gore. He's he's a skeptic, I think, of climate change, which doesn't have the same like connotations at that point. But not an environmentally friendly Democrat and conservative on a lot of issues.
Bad toupee also. Watch his face. Bad toupee.
Yeah.
He looks really old. He looks like he's Dan Quill's grandfather.
Right. So you have the big convention speech. There is a song that's actually composed by John Williams called Fanfare for Michael Dukakis, which is written just for the DNC this year in Atlanta.
It's a heater, folks. We heard it before the show started.
Yeah. And Clinton gives a speech at the convention and ends up going way over time. They're telling him like, wrap up. They turn on the lights to because he wants to see the crowd.
Yeah.
And that's makes it awkward. And people start almost like booing him. And then eventually Bill
He's wearing a pair of pants with his face on it. Keeps telling the audience he's not scared of them.
And then eventually he says, in conclusion, and then they start applauding because he said in conclusion.
Damn, dude.
They want to see Mike. They're there for Mike Dukakis.
Mike.
So as comics, he gets a 15-minute spot, does 33.
Yeah.
And bombs the entire
Yeah, I'm sick.
time.
I hate when I'm at this store and Bill comes in and bumps me, man.
But
It does 40.
The podium at this convention is insane. It is enormous. Like now it's like a normal stage. They're usually pretty froofy, but this thing is like an opera, basically. If you look at the 1988 DNC, and the nominee is this little guy standing at the precipice of this like spaceship in Atlanta.
Sam Donaldson has a good quote before Dukakis' speech. He says, he's a bad speaker. His cadence is wrong. Sometimes he swallows his words. His inflections are off. And above all, exhibits very little passion.
That's what you want.
And then he still has a pretty good speech because he gets a bump. I think this is when he gets the 17-point lead.
Yes. Yeah, he has 17 points coming out of the convention. I think he's somewhat helped by Ann Richards, who's the governor of Texas, and she has a great line about Bush. She says, he was born with a silver foot in his mouth.
Oh. You don't recover from something like that.
Yeah.
But then
I don't care who you are. That's funny.
George W. Bush runs against her and knocks her out as governor in like the next
As
election.
vengeance. They're so
vengeful.
these Bushes.
Is that what's in the Bible? I don't think so.
And Jesse Jackson does unify. He gives a speech. This is the Keep Hope Alive speech, famous one. But he has a line. Dukakis' foreparents came to America on immigrant ships. My foreparents came to America on slave ships. But whatever the original ships, we're in the same boat tonight.
Regardless of ship.
Now, the worst part is Gary Hart, who had dropped out, but he was a big contender. He was the leader at the beginning of the whole process. They don't let him speak, and then he comes the first day, and everyone's mean to him, and he just leaves.
Because it's bad PR.
Yeah, but it's like this guy's an adulterer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let's give half an hour to Bill Clinton.
I assume Biden gets to speak, but
I'm assuming Clinton's just doing crowd work and be like, you ever fist the pussy? I mean, God damn.
Low key, the pussy be hitting different than the butthole. And then his dates come up on the side of the screen.
I know this guy knows what I'm talking about.
But apparently, Dukakis starts kind of crying during his speech.
Yeah, he mentions his dad, immigrant dad, and he starts crying.
Yeah.
Immigrant dads be hitting different as well.
Yeah.
He does try to take it to Bush on economics because in 1980, of course, Bush has that line against Reagan in the primaries, voodoo economics. Reagan's running on voodoo economics. And Dukakis says, we're going to have can-do economics.
That's gold.
Yeah.
That's what America wants.
More like what it weighs.
So, in after that speech, he's up 17 points.
Millions of Americans are like, I'm voting for him. He's the pun master.
Yeah, this guy's restaurant placemat tier humor.
but he has a 17-point lead. But as Susan Estrich, who is Dukakis' campaign manager, if you look at interviews with this woman, she has a smoking problem. I don't know if it's that bad, if her voice sounds like this in the 80s, but if interviews now, she sounds like Selma and Patty put together. And she says, like, it was soft support. It was not sticky support. It was loose support. It wasn't there.
Yeah,
And
my favorite track off Rain Dogs.
Yeah, people don't really know a lot about him. And then Bush is just the VP who won't speak up about Iran-Contra. Ted Kennedy does a speech. He's like, where was George? He keeps saying things Reagan did. He's like, where was George?
Yeah.
Hot water.
But by the fall, they've been able to define Dukakis as a northeastern liberal. They seize on this quote he has about being a card-carrying member of the ACLU,
That's not anything.
You would think, but they.
I heard he's Greek.
And the Greek vote, and that's also
all my friends in college could run for president.
He's got a master near the Vatican.
So
there was a big Greek contingent, of course, backing him for president, and that is also another thing that got him through the primaries is Greek money. All these Greek Americans,
all that Greek money,
padding his pockets because they're excited.
He raises the limit. Sorry, any more on that? Yeah, the card-carrying member, they're supposed to sound like a card-carrying communist. Yep. So it becomes such a big deal that they put that in the movie The American President. Michael Douglas, the American president. It's a Sorkin movie. He's dating a woman while he's in the White House.
That's about a whole different election, though.
It's about fictional.
It's in a fictional universe.
It's different in that it's fictional.
Yeah. But he looks a lot like Dukakis. And in the final speech, he says a line to kind of go back on the card-carrying thing. He says, it's a group dedicated to upholding the Constitution. Why aren't you a card-carrying member? And then he wins his re-election easily, it's assumed.
The thing people don't understand now is people used to carry cards around, and you could have gift cards, you could have cards to coffee shops. You get 10 coffees, you get one free.
Blockbuster, that required a card.
Yeah, no, everything wasn't an app back then.
Yeah. And once Blockbuster fell, that was the first domino, and now nobody's in the ACLU.
When Anders runs, he'll be like, you're an app-carrying member of Blockbuster.
I have followed your Twitter likes, and they sicken me.
But yeah, this first debate, the drugs are an issue. Dukakis does try to stick it to the Reagan-Bush administration on kind of assisting drug dealing with the Contras as well, which doesn't become like a news story until years later. But there's a line that Bush has where he references Crocodile Dundee, and he says that this movie is promoting cocaine use, and we need to shake our finger at this, and that's a big part of being president.
This movie is not a knife. This is a knife.
And that's a big '80s thing. That you mentioned movies. That's a big. That's always a cultural.
Yeah, '80s politics.
Touchstone.
It was all about movies and very low octane roasts.
Yeah. Another thing Fred pointed out, Dukakis will always, because it's still the 20th century, and he'll always call things like the year 1985 when I take office in 1989. And I don't know how often people did that back then, but it just sounds off. And
in the year of our Lord, how are you as a man in 1989 becoming president?
Going back a bit, I'm just laughing because I feel like Gary Hart could have re-entered the race. He was like, yeah, my mistress's name is Nunya. Nunya damn business. Yeah.
Not mine.
Gary Hart has won the primary.
But this is the debate that the Willie Horton issue starts to kind of surface. and later becomes an ad. The caucus is questioned about the Massachusetts furlough program, which was overall, a pretty uncontroversial thing.
Yeah, a prisoner said, "I'm sorry" after a car accident.
Oh yeah.
No jail.
Yeah, similar to that. I mean, you would, if you're a prisoner, you got to take some time off from prison in exchange for good behavior, and wardens loved it because they're like, our jails are less crazy. The prison people are behaving more because they get to take a day off.
Yeah, everyone loves a prison rumspringa.
Yeah. But some people loved it too much. Willie Horton, who statistically, this is like an abnormality because most people did not go out and rape and murder, but this guy did. And
also, he's a murderer.
That's his day off.
Yeah. He's a murderer with no possibility of parole, so he doesn't have that much to lose.
Yeah.
He's not a typical weekend passes guy.
Right. True. Yeah. And later, Dukakis does adjust the policy, so it doesn't. I think he does adjust it where it doesn't apply to murderers.
But Bush sees that he didn't adjust it right away, and Bush like, we're going to get him on this.
Yeah. And I also. He's still in jail. Well, the Horton is still alive.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's been interviewed. I've thought about going to interview him actually, and he's in jail in Maryland. But he claims that he's never gone by Willie. His name has always been William. But the Bush campaign thought that might hit better if he
I can hear George W. Bush saying it. Like, Willie.
Yeah.
Got loose.
Right.
Also,
but the guy he kidnapped claims that he was like, "Call me Willie. My name is Willie. I'm kidnapping you."
I've always been Willie, and I love crime.
Which is like, and the guy who was kidnapped hates Dukakis. He thinks he's, and I understand why.
He has a personal vendetta.
Yeah. So I could see maybe retconning in your memory that this guy was like, "Call me Willie." He really did. They're accurate but the ad that they air. It's criticized for being racially insensitive. There's a picture of Horton, but there's also like a literal revolving door at a prison where convicts are going in and out, and the convicts are mostly white. So that's their.
That must have been fun to film for them, at least. That's a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that commercial gets parodied on The Simpsons too.
Right. So that kind of starts being an issue at that debate. And as Dukakis points out, there's a federal furlough program too. So this is like basically every state is doing this. The federal government is doing this. It's not a controversial thing until this campaign.
And that no longer exists.
Yeah, basically both parties after this election just went. I mean, not that they were, prison abolitionists before this, but they went way to the right on crime.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's the System of a Down song, and the prison population triples. And
It is the 1994 crime bill, authored by Joe Biden.
I learned so much through songs.
Yeah. But
everything I know about politics I've learned from the Deftones.
But you also have
White Pony
election. I want to
election.
mention just that Roger Ailes, the founder of Fox News, is working on the Bush campaign. I think he's involved with the Horton stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He says it's technically not a racist commercial because saying Willie Horton's name isn't racist.
Well, we were talking. That was like Lee Atwater's big thing, right? That was his like.
Lee Atwater's
that was
his
his
boss.
like Blackbird Singing in the Dead of the Night. That was his big single.
Yeah.
Lee Atwater is like, our goal is to make Willie Horton Dukakis' running mate.
Right. And he's very effective at that.
Which he can't legally do because he's in jail.
Yes, right.
We'll
I'm
see.
against for the weekend furlough program. I don't think you should be able to become a vice president.
I mean, hey, you might do it. Someone might do it as president. So
Eugene V. Debs did it, so already a member of the Vanquished who did it.
Yeah. Also, the vice presidential debate has one of the most famous moments in American political history. You got Benson v. Quayle, and Benson, it's widely agreed, mops the floor with him. Mostly because of this line he lands where Quayle is questioned about his experience, and he's like, well, hey, I've been in office as long as Jack Kennedy was in office before he ran for president. And Benson says, sir, I served with Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Woo! You're going to leave the house in that.
It's almost too racy for TV back then.
Yeah. And But that doesn't really matter. Unfortunately, the vice president, their debates don't make that much of an impact. So it's a great moment, but doesn't do much. And
I got a question for you, Dan Quayle. How much does it weigh?
Apparently, also, Benson was really nervous, and he didn't even want to do the debate. He wanted to call it off, but it ended up being the best thing about that campaign.
It's the only thing he'll ever be remembered for.
Yeah, host hits the fatality sound effect from Mortal Kombat.
Killing spree.
Yeah.
Cool thing.
Holy shit.
Oh yeah, like in the roast battles, they do that.
Yeah.
The cool thing with these debates, like they'll open with like a mean ass question. Like the opening question is, Mr. Quayle, some say we're the worst choice George Bush could have made.
Yeah.
And then the next one's going to open with an even more devastating question.
Right.
It's going to ruin Dukakis' campaign.
Yes, the Kitty Dukakis
Does that
question.
debate open with that question?
Yes,
First question.
It's a minute 45 in the video. He's like, "Here's the rules. They're not. The candidates have not told us what to ask. What if I raped your wife?" It's like
That's
pretty
television.
close to that, yeah.
Admit it. That's television.
Right. That's definitely
Gotta keep people from changing the channel. That's funny because my one piece of research was going on YouTube and watching that video again because I have seen it in the past, and like the comments section is very funny because it is like a support group for like my mom, like just like older Democrats being like, this is a horrible question, which like of course obviously you're right. It obviously
It
is.
was
Rude to ask that.
And all of the women on the CNN staff, the debate team at that point were like, "Do not ask that for the love of God."
Right.
And Bernard Shaw was like, "No, I have to."
Well, it also just like speaks, I guess, the national attitude at the time that everyone was like, "Yeah, that's an okay question. Fuck this guy."
Yeah. And of course, his answer is that he's still anti-death penalty, and it's seen as very emotionless. I do have to wrap up now with these guys, but just quickly, Dukakis, of course, loses. He does win 10 states, though, including West Virginia, which gets like overlooked. Like that was a Democratic state for a long ass time. And as the book we read, Brutal Campaign, points out, he is actually in striking distance in like a few large states to where if it had gone slightly different, maybe Dukakis would have won.
How close did it get in Texas?
I don't think very. I mean, Benson was running as for Senate.
I'm looking at this map. It's pretty bad.
I've seen the map.
No one's won by more electoral votes since because Bush gets 426. I think the most
Blaze it.
since is like Obama with like 360
What about
or
Clinton?
something.
Clinton doesn't do it?
I looked it up. I didn't write it down on this document, but like Obama and Clinton have a couple of years where they do pretty well, but not anywhere over 400.
I mean, compared to the 1984 map, it's like good for you guys. Wow, some big gains.
Yeah.
He made it the second round of the playoffs.
Right. And, you know, and credit to him, he starts kind of establishing what becomes kind of the Democratic walls for the 90s through today. On the West Coast, he wins Oregon and Washington. He does pretty well in New England and gets his ass kicked basically everywhere else. But it's still, he's forming a foundation. And if things had gone a little differently, if he had hit back against the attack ads earlier, which he does end up doing towards the end of the campaign, but if he had taken that head on, if he had not refused to go like negative against Bush because he's like, I'm a positive guy, maybe the race would have gone a little differently. And also embraced economic populism. Like there's a self-serving aspect to this. As a socialist, of course, I want him to be for the left. But if you look at, union members during this campaign, they were not excited about Michael Dukakis. A lot of them showed up. A lot of African Americans did not show up. He won the vote of Black Americans. But if he had maybe campaigned with Jesse Jackson, then he would have boosted his numbers, would have boosted turnout. Maybe, there's a good case that maybe he could have won the electoral vote and lost the popular vote. But we will never know. As far as what he would have been like as president, I think probably similar to Jimmy Carter would be my guess because of personal things. But also, this is after 8 years of Reagan. The country's moved to the right. He's limited in what he can do, and he's not that interested in making a more egalitarian economy so much.
I like the idea. Maybe he'd leave Saddam alone. Like maybe he doesn't get as much involved in the Middle East. Maybe Saddam and him are both still alive and hanging out somewhere.
Would he still talk to Ice Cube about the rap community and if it's dangerous? Or that was Eazy-E talked to George H.W. Bush.
To Clinton, I think. Or was it Bush?
I think it was H.W.
Oh, wow.
Bush.
Okay. Huh. I don't know if a Democrat could get away with it. But he would have been better on AIDS. Probably would have saved a lot of lives. But yeah, we will talk more about President Dukakis.
Oh, we got a whole tank. If you're watching, stay tuned. We're talking about the tank in part 2.
Yes. But thank you, my two massholes, for joining us. Mr. Durso, Mr. Ptak, where can people find you?
Go Sox.
I'd like to reiterate the Go Sox, Go Celtics, playoffs are happening. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins.
At the moment, not to date this podcast. At Andrew_Durso on all the stuff.
Yes, I have a podcast called Core Raiders. If you're tired of learning about the presidency, you can go and read Quora posts.
And hey, if you want to meet Michael Dukakis, go to the Northeastern campus in Litter.
Yeah, check out all the different colleges in the great state of Massachusetts as well. The Spirit of America, Massachusetts.
Yeah. Oh, I should also mention, my parents met in Boston, so it's kind of part of my...
a lot of them do.
It's a lot like Rome, it's a romantic city.
Yeah.
I once
But my mom, she reminded me she used to take the T to work with Michael Dukakis in the
man of the
70s and 80s.
people.
What line?
Whatever the Brookline one was. The apartment in Brookline.
Yeah,
Purple?
That's the B line.
Okay. Cool.
I don't fucking know.
All right.
Yeah, I saw Michael Dukakis at the Rathskeller in 1988.
Oh yeah,
He was opening for the Pixies.
you're a guy who was dancing on the table and tapping on the square last Friday.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Vanquished. If you want the full thing, because there is more, please go to patreon.com/The Vanquished, where you can get the rest of this episode as well as our full episode catalog. You can support our work as well as annoy us in the comments.